The answers we seek are just outside of our reach. This is the tagline of the Brad Pitt starring vehicle, Ad Astra, directed by James Gray. I'm joined with Mia.
Hello, I'm Mia.
She's back!
Sorry. I'm back again. I'm so excited. I just had to
But Brat Pitt, obviously, to join us talking about this interesting film that we're about to get into. But just to start things off, Mia, just give me some general thoughts. Obviously, keeping things spoiler-free if you guys want to listen. This is going to be a spoiler discussion. But just off the start, how you felt about this film. Go for it.
Yes, spoiler-free. I was initially kind of nervous about it just because there were so many production issues. Like, it was supposed to come out last Christmas, then it was supposed to come out in May, and now it's finally out. So I was nervous, and I didn't need to be, because I think that this is just a beautifully atmospheric sci-fi space drama, not action thriller or anything, in my opinion, that really probes about all these different themes that are just not really explored in a way that I would have liked to see in other sci-fi movies, like just loneliness and vulnerability and all of that. In my opinion, a lot of sci-fi movies will kind of relegate that to like a B plot or just kind of like a theme underneath the action. Whereas this one is really, really about specifically loneliness, love and like father issues and vulnerability and the repression of emotions and all of these things that hadn't really been filmed with as much dedication and care and gravitas, and I was very moved. I cried twice.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, I cried twice during this movie.
I can see the moments. We'll probably get into that in a second.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that it's a triumph, and it's one of the better space movies I've seen. Yes.
Gotcha. Awesome. I agree similarly. I was talking to Mia beforehand. I'm a little worried that we're on similar wavelengths for this project. Usually, sometimes it turns out that way, and that's fine. But it's always nice. I know a couple of people aren't too high on this. They think it's boring. I think it's the exact opposite. I told my friends this. Interstellar is one of my favorite films of all time. However, I think Ad Astra is more ambitious or takes more risks. Especially like, I don't know, there's just something. I love space movies. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this to the detriment of any space movies. I just mean there's sort of like a by the numbers way where they put that emotional ties that you were talking about to the background. And I think James Gray wanted to make a film that didn't have to focus on like the tropes of sci-fi. And I think what's so interesting here, obviously Brad Pitt producing is a big part of this, but I don't feel like, because this is a big budget film, but even something like an original property like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think that has a built-in fan base of people that are going to love that. And I don't think James Gray and Brad Pitt went into this, wanting to appeal to people or wanting to appease people. They just wanted to make something they thought was important or something that they think could be discussed. And I think it's really an artistic film, one of the best looking films of the year. I struggle with certain parts, and we'll get into more of that. But I think specifically with the end, it really, really brings everything together for me. And Brad Pitt is phenomenal. But if you want,
I agree. I agree. That's the thing. We are on this wavelength. Just the cinematography. Oh, it needs to get a cinematography nomination because there were multiple.
It will.
I know
which is upsetting, especially just the color palette.
Yeah, I guess it is pretty gray.
Yeah, they went so far with so many different shades of Brad Pitt. I was like, oh, Brad Pitt in red and yellow and green.
Yeah, and I really liked just the color in the airport. I guess there were just like kind of random blocks of color, which I thought were very interesting. But there were just multiple shots that made me like gasp out loud because of how
impressive
beautiful they how impressive that they looked, and that just doesn't happen often for me. And it's
if
my
you
favorite
want,
feeling. It's my
if you
favorite
want, we
thing
can
to get.
get right into spoilers, specifically different moments, key things we want to discuss. I sort of want to get gripes out of the way, if that's okay
Yeah,
with
yeah, that
you.
sounds good. Because I don't think it's perfect. I gave it 4 out of
Yeah,
5. You know.
yeah. I think I'm leaning to a similar score. I think I see this again. Interestingly enough, I think I'm going to bring my dad because I think this is a
Nice.
movie. I don't know. He might not like this. But I thought specifically the scene where they're going onto the aircraft where they have the distress signal and there's baboons.
With the monkeys, yeah.
Yeah, it just felt a little clunky to me or like out of
Yeah.
place. Maybe it was just because I was like, okay, maybe there's like, I don't know what I was thinking, like supernatural things. And this is something specifically with the film that we'll get into more. It sort of handles your expectations in a way where you're expecting one thing, and it's not baboons. You're expecting either a crazy crew or aliens, even, or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think that scene, retrospectively seeing all the film, I think it works. And we'll see going back to it, especially just how I need to know his name. Oh, Roy McBride feels about that afterwards, where he's talking about the blind rage. Like he's seen that before. He's seen it in his father. He's seen it in himself. Um,
Ugh.
I think that does bring up something important. But again, baboons.
Yeah,
Just
no,
felt
it was out of nowhere. I was like shocked. I that one. I was not expecting a baboon. And
yeah.
the yeah, I do think that like the as you said, the point of it was that Roy McBride could talk about his feelings and about rage and repressing that rage, constantly having to repress that in this semi-dystopian world. But yeah, I don't really know why they were baboons. The only thing I was thinking about 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Well,
A
I
lot
think
of the
this film
a
is
lot
very,
during the film.
but I
Yeah,
don't.
but
Okay, just because I think this is what you're meaning too. But just to be
yeah.
clear for the people listening, obviously this is spoilers. But I don't. There's a lot of films like people say Christopher Nolan took inspiration for 2001 to go into his film. A bunch of people use that as inspiration. I don't feel like this is a taking inspiration from 2001. I feel like this is being the current day 2001. Um,
Yeah, no, I see that. I see that. Yeah.
I love 2001, and I think again it goes back to this ambition where James Gray is just making his own project. But yeah, no, they're very similar.
Yeah. And I love 2001: A Space Odyssey. I think that's another one that I saw. I saw it in 70 millimeter last summer, and oh my god,
It's
just
beautiful.
incredible. I think that it's one of the most important, influential sci-fi movies of all time. I think that like most sci-fi movies, the designs from them like come from that film, and I just think it's crucial. And so yeah, this really did have a lot of 2001 undertones, especially like when I saw that baboon, I instantly thought of the beginning of
Of the
2001
beginning, yeah.
with, all
That's
the
fair.
monkeys, because that's like ambitious to start off that film with 20 minutes of monkeys, and like no
Especially when you
dialogue.
are going to lose people very quickly.
Yeah, like
Um,
that's hardcore. Like go off with that one. But yeah, that's the only thing I could really think of as to why it was a baboon, I guess,
this is
was
we're having the same gripes too.
yeah.
Oh no.
No,
No,
but
but it,
I mean, I thought that it was fun and kind of added like this thrilling aspect to it, but I also didn't think that that thrilling aspect was necessary to a film that's so not literally down to earth, but kind of down to earth in the sense that it's like, it's pretty grounded in what it's trying to do. It doesn't really take
exactly.
these, yeah.
And that's one of the important things. I feel like in a lot of space movies, they, again, don't really focus on that. And oh boy. So it starts out with him being, unemotional, very low key, like not thinking of these ties, trying to suppress everything.
Mhm.
And I thought the way it was going is that this character would be like that the whole time. And that's usually how sci-fi films do handle that character, but it's
Yeah.
him growing like as each and one of these things happens. And it just, when they're on the moon, like that rage he's talking about with the baboons, you see that when he's like, God, like people arguing over resources. That's all we do over and over. It's what my dad like wants to get rid of. And just, I don't know, the way you think that's going to go, where he's going to have that confrontation with his dad. You just think it's going to be so much more than what it is. And it's just them having a conversation, and okay, what moments did you cry at?
Oh, okay. So I cried when okay, so there's that part where that like robot asks about his psychological state, and then he like is like holding back tears, and he's like really thinking about things, and you can just kind of tell that people don't really ask him that. Like in this society specifically, they see emotions as weakness, which is demonstrated by like the mood stabilizing pills and the comfort rooms and the BPM thing that he always has to wear to make sure his heart rate doesn't go above 80 BPM. And I just hold on, I lost my train of thought.
You did. I think
where was I going?
I think those things do definitely make it shown, like you're thinking at first like, oh hey, this guy is just like naturally in control of everything, and it's like, no, they've put everything off to the side. And what I think is really important, that's something we desperately need to talk about. Obviously this has, it's the astronaut, but it is tied to military, and I think specifically with the military, there's a huge problem in people coming back and not knowing how to deal with these emotions and come back into society, whereas I think people brush it off as, and I think they do this in this film where they're just like, oh, you're Roy McBride. Like everybody knows, like, thank you for your service. And there's nothing more to that. It's not like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Like, what does the loss of your dad mean to you? And instead they're just like, instead of asking like, hey, are you doing okay? You've obviously lost your father and you're going on this mission. It's, are you going to be okay to do this? Like, are you in a okay mental state to make this mission successful? And he's having to keep everything down. And it's something. And so we said earlier, because you were talking about the Phantom Thread interview, I think Brad Pitt influenced James Gray to, I feel like this is a Paul Thomas Anderson space movie.
I love that.
And I mean that like in a credit to James Gray, obviously. I just mean, I'm not too big on his previous films.
I actually haven't seen really any of his previous films because they looked just not my type of...
They're a little boring.
Not like my type of thing.
And I was really excited for Lost City of Z because people pitched it to me as an adventure movie, and I love adventure movies like Indiana Jones. And maybe but no, it has these Paul Thomas Anderson elements to it that I think Brad Pitt sort of got a little bit of inspiration from watching The Phantom Thread and that scrumptiousness where it, obviously this isn't similar, but Phantom Thread focuses on the food, but it also focuses on that character development, and that is the vehicle of the film. The food and dresses are just ancillary, whereas it's the sci-fi. But first and foremost, it is about this main character. And I think specifically where this film succeeds for me is where he's talking about his father's discoveries, and his father's deranged. Like it's very clear early on. Yeah. And Tommy Lee Jones was really solid in a limited role. But he says that line, and I think it's going to be one of those lines, regardless of how many people see this. And like you were saying, the box office does not matter for what a film is. That line where he says, and I think this is the thesis for this film, is he's falling back and he's talking about his father's research, and he says, oh, well, my father found all these beautiful planets, every single one of them brimming with beauty, but he got lost in trying to find something else when what he really wanted was at home this whole time. And I think that speaks to something of us, sort of wanting other life out there, and us always thinking, oh, there's other people out there, and just realizing like, hey, you have to sort of come to terms with being alone in the world. Like, what if we are just this blue dot? And I think it does that in like a beautiful way, where Brad Pitt's like falling back and he's discovering like, oh, hey, I can be myself now. Like this weight is gone. And that's what makes the film for me. I'm not sure if you want to add more to this, but that's where it sort of won me over.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it takes these themes that like we've kind of explored that idea in other movies where it's like family's more important than other things, you know? But like that's a very common theme, and I don't think it's ever going to go out of style because it's always relevant. And but I think that this one does just a beautiful job of not explaining, but like demonstrating what it's like to that constant battle between always wanting something but also knowing that what you have is great, like with his
too.
wife.
Yeah, for sure.
Just like that, just like that constant wanting more and more when you could just hang out with your loved ones. Like that's so fulfilling. And he's like, he says, oh, what?
I was just going to say, I think what's pushing him for like leaving his wife is that thought of his, like that unknowingness of his father, which is again, similar to his father. Like it's this weird, like cat and mouse thing where it's like, oh, well, the dog chases space because the dog being his father chases space because he wants something more. And then Brad Pitt chases his father because, he is wanting something more. He's wanting his father in his life. I don't know. There's just something.
He just clearly admires his father, or he used to and he probably still does, but really admires his father to the point. He still does because like his dad went to space, and then the fact that Roy McBride also becomes an astronaut, and he even says when he's like doing that message to his dad, like, I'm an astronaut now. I think you'd be really proud. Yeah. And that scene too. When he's sending the message to his father, and the first message, that was such a great scene. The first message is so clinical and detached, and it's like, of course, it's like, this feels like a trap. Like, of course he wouldn't respond to it, But then the next one where he's like, I remember you liked old movies that were musicals and all these things, and he had all these personal things. And then they get the response.
If we're talking about that scene in particular, what's so interesting is it does both things, where it's Brad Pitt it's that character being able to get a response, but you don't know if that's his whole goal or if it's him wanting to talk to his father. And I think in that moment it could be both, but it's very clearly he wants to see his father again. At that point, he's like, I want to go. And oh God, what almost got, because you were talking about crying moments, what almost got me is when Brad Pitt's like, I still love you, Dad. And he just gives him that look. And you can tell like because he says, he's like, I haven't thought of you once.
I haven't thought about you once in the past. And then the single tear that goes, oh.
Yeah. Again, because you don't see that from him because he's been suppressing all of this. And it's lovely.
Just the themes of suppression and repression and all of that. It really, really hit for me, and I think for Brad Pitt specifically as a person as well, because he kind of talks about this in his GQ interview. Just because like being that famous is similar to what Roy McBride is doing, because like Brad Pitt is that much of a famous person, he has to hide his emotions, he has to repress everything, he has to, for like the good of his family and like himself and his own privacy, and he has to always act like everything's okay, and he's this cool guy, he's always this coolest guy on the planet. To be the coolest man like on the planet, that's like,
yes, unfortunately he has been tasked with this impossible
and that's like another thing, because I'm sure he feels like, oh, I shouldn't complain about being the coolest guy on the planet, but it also sucks, but I don't want to complain about it. And it's like, I think that this guy is going through the same thing, where it's like he's a brilliant astronaut and he has this like interesting mission, and he feels like he can't complain about it, not necessarily complain, but like speak about it, because it's so discouraged to talk about your emotions in that world. True. And I think that's also part of why his performance was so great, because he just could really
resonate with that character. Yeah, for sure. Are there any other things you want to talk about? I mean, I don't know. I've talked about most of the things I want. This was fun.
Yeah.
I don't know, because normally, like, most of the time when we do these things, normally it's like, oh, well, I like this a little bit more than you, and it's like, okay, let's argue why. And it's just like, ooh, this is
I know,
fun.
yeah.
Someone had a very similar experience as me.
Yeah. I agree. Like and the idea that it's boring. I think that's a really
Don't
interesting idea,
understand that.
actually. Yeah, because I mean, like 2001: A Space Odyssey. To go back to that, like that's and I'm saying this knowing that it's a masterpiece and I love it. It's boring, in the sense that, like it's a lot of long, lingering shots of just like pretty still. The frame is pretty still. Not a lot is happening. Like it's literally like languid and it's an epic, and I see how that's boring. Like when I watched it the first time and everything, like I was like, okay, I'm kind of bored, but I know that what I'm seeing is like a masterpiece. So like I could appreciate it while being bored, I guess, if that makes sense. And I don't think every movie has to necessarily be exciting also. Like,
Oh, for sure.
like nonstop dialogue, action, da 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 da. Like I think that it is very like certain films it's very important to just kind of linger in them, just to kind of let it wash over you and let it absorb. And I think that that's what this film does, where it's like it could be boring if you're not focused on it or if you're not interested in the
In
character.
the story at all.
I see how that would be boring if like you didn't really care about this guy or space or anything.
Especially when he's the main guy.
Yeah, especially when he's the main guy. It's like, yeah, okay, I see that. But, since we are obviously fans of Brad Pitt and I really like this character, I didn't find it boring. But I see how other people would
make that terrible claim.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I can see that even if I didn't really relate to that. But it's
I really hope I really hope people that do enjoy this, please tell your friends, because I saw this with girlfriend, and she was saying, oh, well, I don't know if my friends would like super love this. And I get that, but I don't know. Like I think right on Rotten Tomatoes, because Rotten Tomatoes is the absolute worst. But Rotten Tomatoes, it's one of those splits where it's like critics love it, and then because critics love it, audiences go into it thinking, yeah, and they're like, that wasn't. I don't even know what they're looking for. Like,
I feel like they might be looking for
like a sci-fi action movie.
Yeah, like a sci-fi action, like Brad Pitt, like against aliens with a gun, and he's doing, just like things like that. That's going to be exciting.
I think this might make like one of my 10 films where like I sort of tell other family, because they ask me at the end of the year, they know I'm super into movies, and I try to make like a list of 10 films that are like mandatory viewing, where I would want the entire public, because that's what I feel like Best Picture should be.
Yeah, when a lot of different people could like it, and I think that's so hard to do, to get
not even that people would like it. I just want people to be exposed to it, because I think a lot of people might not like Ad Astra. Like I'm worried my dad won't like it, but even if he doesn't like it, it's like, no, I wanted you to see this. Like I wanted you to have this experience. But
I agree.
Please go see it.
Yeah, no, I have a private list on Letterboxd just called like movies that I think that everybody should see, because they touch on such universal and essential themes that it's important to like expose yourself to that so that you can learn and kind of reflect. And I think that, this movie is absolutely one of those where it's a very reflection, like you should reflect after seeing it. And I think that's beautiful. And
so we're giving a ringing endorsement. A couple of the other people that I've talked to have said similar things. Most people are decently high on it, I feel like. But again, obviously, know what you're getting into. Which this is a spoiler talk, so I don't even know how I'd say that.
Well, I mean,
that wraps up our talk. Thank you again, Mia, for both these episodes and coming on to chat about Brad Astra.
Oh, anytime. I will talk about Brad Pitt anytime, anywhere. Anybody listening, please let me talk about Brad Pitt with you. Thank you.
All right, that's our episode. I normally put the stuff where it's like, oh, follow us on this, but Brad Pitt's time to shine.
Yeah.
So check out our other episode if you're listening to this and haven't listened to that. It is fairly long, but it's really fun. So yeah, peace. All right. And then I'll get Craig to leave. Yeah, this might be because I recorded it. Oh shoot, I said Craig joined. Dang it. God.